Hey, what is going on, podcast peeps? It is episode 4 of Beyond the Broadcast. My name is Tyler Bruner. I am your host. Man, so great to see you back here on another really awesome episode with another really awesome individual that we get to talk to. Hey, just before we get started here today, as always, just want to ask a teensy little favor, and that's to follow the podcast wherever you're listening or watching it here today. It's going to help me grow this shindig. It's going to help me get bigger guests, and it's just going to, it's just going to be awesome. So if you can support us that way, that would be fantastic. All the social channels you need are right down below. We've got a Facebook page made for Beyond the Broadcast. So I broke down. I was kind of going back and forth. I wanted to do that or not, and here we are. So all the social links are right below on this podcast episode. And of course, make sure you go and follow us because that's just going to help us grow this show. Let's talk about today's guest. Man, I am so appreciative of today's guest. It's Mr. Clayton Van Horn. He's a guy who is really just carving his own path in life. It's been really cool to see him develop. We both went to college together. A lot of people that are on this show I have known from college, but I've just seen a lot of really cool success. Right now, he is with the Omaha Storm Chasers, AAA affiliate with the KC Royals. But it was a college project that really put Clayton on the map to really show what he can do as a video guy. He self-defines as a video editor, but he'll say throughout the broadcast that he, really does call himself a videographer, which is really cool to see that evolution of him. So he talks about his really awesome documentary called Unsanctioned. He followed the Ridgeview Raptors girls wrestling team up in Iowa, followed them for an entire season, all the way up to the state tournament, telling their stories, telling their triumphs, their failures. I mean, it is such a really cool piece of storytelling that you gotta go watch. Of course, I'll link it in the description below of this episode. It's on Rockfin. That's where you can find it. A lot of wrestling content is on Rockfin, but it's Unsanctioned is the documentary. So make sure you show Clayton some love and go and show him some love with liking that video on Rockfin. So we got a lot to talk about. So let's just get to it. Episode 4, Beyond the Broadcast. And this is my good media friend, Clayton Van Horn. Mr. Clayton, hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
I'm just living life. I'm living as well as I can, trying to stay as busy as possible. But man, you look great, and you're doing some really awesome things right now, man.
Well, I appreciate that. No, that's so flattering. Thank you very much.
I remember for people who don't know, me and Clayton were at BVU at the same exact point. He was a freshman. I was just leaving. But I've had the chance to bump into Clayton a few times here before. And now, Clayton, first of all, before we even start anything, congratulations on getting engaged, man. How does it feel?
That's awesome. This is the best thing ever, Nothing I do will ever make me as happy as getting engaged. And I'm assuming getting married will be better. I'm guessing, all I can say is I'm really looking forward to it. It can't come soon enough. And by the way, met Hannah. You went to college with Hannah too. She's in our grade, or she's in my grade. So
right,
you were a senior for freshman year, and yeah, met in college. She was a digital media major like me. It just works out.
It all just works out, man.
Yep, she was in Omaha, here about 12 minutes away from me, and so it's great. Can't wait until she lives 0 minutes away from me.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man.
That's gonna be way better.
So, you have been doing some really, really awesome things, and the big reason why I wanted to bring you on this show today, you're just kicking butt all over the place. I mean, we'll talk about everything that you've done up at this point. I know I'm buttering you up. That's what I gotta do. But let's just start, man. What all are you involved in right now when it comes to media and just other things in your life?
So, well, right now I work for the Omaha Storm Chasers. I'm the video and multimedia coordinator there. I prefer the term video guy, but they insist on calling me the long title. But and then on the side, because obviously during baseball season I'm not as busy, or during baseball season, I'm pretty busy, but in the off season, I'm not as busy. So I'm volunteer coaching wrestling at Ralston High School and middle school. I do both. And so, which just gives me a good age range to deal with, for lack of a better term. But yeah, those are the two big things. I'm planning a wedding with my fiance, who's wonderful. And those are the three big things. A year ago, 2 years ago now, I finished up. I don't know. Time flies, but
Right.
I finished up a docuseries, Unsanctioned, which was originally my capstone project for my senior year at BVU. That kind of took off more than I thought it would. But yeah, I mean, that's basically what I'm up to now.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Unsanctioned, because while it wasn't the exact starting point of this journey you've had in video and multimedia and content creation, definitely, I think, like you said, one of the biggest projects that you have really taken on your senior year, and I had the pleasure of watching it as the episodes came out. So if anyone wants to go out and watch it, go watch it. It's on Rockfin right now. It's spectacular. Talk to me about this idea, because it really melted together your two interests of videography and video editing along with wrestling. So how did this idea come to play? And of course, I want you to kind of explain the whole name of Unsanctioned and how that came to be.
Right. It really started with my so I don't know. It really began with Jason Shepard, who is he's a character in Unsanctioned, but he's also, many people don't know this who know me. They don't know that Jason Shepard is a computer science professor at Buena Vista University, and he taught me computer science. So during class one day, he saw one of my videos that I produced for the wrestling team, and he's like, "Hey, did you make that?" I was like, "Yeah, I did." And he sets down his coffee mug where the handle that you grab is brass knuckles. He sets it down on the table and goes, "That was really cool." I was like, "Oh, thank you very much." And I thought nothing of it. Most of the wrestling guys on campus, if they know that I made the video, they usually compliment me. They're just being nice. And so I, whatever, went to class, whatever. About a year later, a year after the class was over and everything, he emailed me with the subject title, "Video Awesomeness," and said, "Hey, Clayton, haven't seen you in a while, and I'd like to ask you if you'd want to produce a video for my wrestling team, a high school girls team. We want to recruit, we want to grow our school, like awareness in our school of girls wrestling, so we can build our team so we can compete statewide, basically." Because they had a lot of really good wrestlers, but their numbers were too low that they really couldn't score the team points to compete. And I was like, okay, I was a wrestler for so many years. I was like, girls wrestling wasn't really a thing when I was in high school. I was kind of like, he said he'd pay me. I guess I'll just do it. It would be so easy for me. I've done it a million times. I'll just do it. I'll take the money, whatever. Plus, Jason Shepard's a really cool guy. I'll get to talk to him a little bit. It's a win-win-win-win-win. So I went and I did it, and I watched his daughter and Izzy Deeds and Jolene Tiefenthaler, and I just watched them absolutely obliterate girls. Not just obliterate girls, but obliterate them with such dominant wrestling technique that I was like, whoa, this is something I've never seen before. And I was blown away, And I just kind of assumed that they were the only girls in the whole state that could wrestle like that. And I was like, okay, this is pretty special, And I remember pitching a news feature package at a BVTV meeting. I was like, we should do something to highlight these girls because they are freaking dominators, they're just awesome in every way you can imagine, and we got to highlight them. And it just never happened because I try to be busy, and it just never really fell on my plate until I had to do a capstone project, and for my BV whatever project for digital media, I got to do a capstone project. I was kind of thinking what I wanted to do for that. And I was talking to Zach Hess, a guy I looked up to quite a bit in the grade above me, and he and I was just throwing ideas, whatever. And I said, like, well, I could do like a docu-series about them. And then like maybe the first episode is just um, like the first episode could just be like my capstone project. And if it takes off, it takes off, and I'll keep doing it. And I'm like, yeah, but that's probably a dumb idea. And Zach goes, no, 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 no. That is an amazing idea, and you need to do that. In fact, I'm gonna beat your ass if you don't do that. And I go, okay, I guess I'll do it. And it took off in a way. I got so passionate about this idea that like I created a social media presence for them. It's like it put stuff out, and I don't know. It dominated my life like a year, and it was so much fun to shoot. It was because I love the wrestling environment, just going to tournaments and whatever. And one thing I really wanted to do was capture that environment in a way that someone who's never been to a wrestling meet still understands what it's like to be there, and the kids show up, they're warming up and they're super nervous. And then they put the brackets up on the wall, and that just makes you more nervous. And they're looking at it like, oh, like there's a shot I remember I'm really proud of Shania Graybill looking at the wall, looking at her bracket from like across like 20 feet away. She didn't want to like walk right up. And so, I don't know. It kind of, it's just that sort of thing. I don't know. I lost my train of thought there.
No, that's okay. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, this was a multi-series docu-series in which you followed the Ridgeview High School girls wrestling team. Now, for some context for listeners, the state of Iowa has now officially been sanctioned, or has sanctioned the sport of girls wrestling for the last, I think it was 2 years ago, they had done it. And of course, Clayton, you had the interesting experience of going through that season, following these girls throughout their journeys, and capturing all these moments. So how great was it to be a part of this team and to see the failures and the successes? Because you got to go down to the state tournament and film some of the girls that got there. But what was that whole process kind of like for you to be expanding your video talents, but also to watch these kids grow as wrestlers and individuals?
It was awesome. Yeah, I can't even. There's no other word than awesome, because not only did I get to follow the team, but I got to follow the two of the best wrestling coaches I've ever been around. Troy Greeter and Jason Shepard, and the way that they approached different athletes was pretty awesome. And the development of some of the girls. Like Shania is one of the characters, and it was her first year wrestling, and she wins her very first match. But then, wrestling's a freaking hard sport, and losing. One of the great quotes I think came from Jason Shepard, where he said, when you fail in wrestling, you fail spectacularly, and you do, man. It hurts. Wrestling, when you lose a wrestling match, it doesn't even matter if it's your 100th loss or if it's your first loss. It sucks, and it's hard to watch, and to watch these kids go through that, knowing that could be the outcome. They work so hard, knowing the outcome could be they lose and that's it, and I don't know. It's I don't know. It's awesome. It was surprising because I guess I had never coached before, and I had only been an athlete. And so watching athletes really develop, I'm sure that happened my whole life, and I just didn't notice it because I guess I didn't have the maturity, or I wasn't looking. I was too focused on myself developing. But watching every single wrestler develop was wild.
Yeah.
Every single person got better. Not only just a better wrestler, but better person, more resilient person, stronger mentally, stronger physically, obviously. Yeah, it was just awesome to watch.
So talk to me about that whole process, because I mean, this was originally supposed to be one episode, turned into a multi-episode thing. Like you said, really took off. What were some parts of this process what were some things that you learned throughout this process, whether it be video editing techniques or just being a professional? What were some of those things that you took away from that entire process?
There's no such thing as shooting too much footage, as long as you're organized. That was the big thing. And I'm notoriously in college, I was not a very organized person, but this project forced me to be organized and really like make sure if something was shot on a certain date, it's in that folder, or whatever, because great moments could just be gone if you don't have that footage in the right spot. But the other thing is like to train myself to look at something as if the story, like watching real life like it's a movie, like when somebody wins a match, a big match or whatever, or loses a big match, watch it and be like, where's this going? How's this going to develop? What will she, after this loss, is she going to be, how are they going to react? And what does that say about, how does that connect to things they've said in interviews before that I can use to pull, I can pull those and whatever, and watching storylines unfold in real time. I've never done that before. This was my very first try. And it was one of those things that I'm just really glad that I had this experience because, feature, sort of that feature style of videography was never really my thing. But I've connected myself with these characters, and I call them characters. They're people,
Right, right.
But I call them characters because Tatum Shepard in Unsanctioned is different than Tatum Shepard now. She's not a sophomore in high school anymore. She actually is going to graduate this year. Like those people, I'm putting forth the version of themselves that is the version of themselves that I think is most true to the story of the season, But like I have a lot of footage of them talking about like who's dating who or whatever. I'm just not gonna include that,
I do got to ask because of just how I think massive this project did become. How much space did you end up using? Have you ever like gone back to see how much footage and how much space you absolutely used and how many memory cards and hard drives you used?
Yeah, so it's actually a point of pride that I used 2.6 terabytes of footage. Yeah,
Wow.
2.6 terabytes. It was a lot, And then when on the state tournament days, I recorded so much. It was like 64 gigabytes. I'd have two SD cards or HD cards. It was wild. But
Yeah.
and like I had two cameras at the state tournament. I had one on like a DSLR on a tripod pointed at the coaches in the corner, and then I would be recording the match. And so I had it was wild, but yeah, like that. Like I said, if I wasn't organized, it basically would be zero footage because it would just be a mess.
Well, and talk about that because I mean, obviously, you were forced, like you said, to really get as organized as possible. So when you go through this process of putting these things together, is it just you record, because obviously you have footage of the matches, you have footage from state wrestling, you have all these little moments that kind of thread together with these interviews, but what does that process look like when you're sitting down and editing this? I mean, you have to be very deliberate with how you organize yourself.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of organization, I just put it was this day, and then I would just throw all the footage into that folder, But then in terms like so much goes into it because I had the motion graphics, the lower thirds. I had to make sure those were all in the same place, and then the scoreboard graphics that would come on the corner, like those had to all be like I developed those in After Effects, so those weren't in Premiere. So I had to like make those in After Effects, export them, and they all had to be correct because I don't want to go back into track wrestling, which is like, if you don't know, track wrestling is like the database with every single wrestling match that was ever wrestled. I don't want to have to go back and find that match and then put the person's last name in, Like I just have to remember. And yeah, I mean, so there's that, but in terms of editing, the process that went into that is something someone told me when I was a sophomore in high school, always stuck with me, is that the editor is the last storyteller of any production, like, and even Zach Hess isn't the one who told me that, but Zach Hess reaffirmed it when he told me like the story of any film is it's told in the writing, and then it's another version of it is told, an interpretation of that is told during the production, and then the interpretation of that is retold in the editing. And the editor's the last person. So when I'm sitting down to edit this, like I have all this raw footage, I have to think, like, what lessons did I learn this year? Like, did I learn, like, what did I learn is important about the sport of wrestling in this season? And I was like, I want every single episode to be about one of those things, you know? Like, I think the first one is called Passion and Purpose. Greatest quote I've ever heard in my life from Troy Greeter is where he said, when your passion starts helping people, it becomes your purpose. And I was like, wow, like there's got to be something about that in the first episode. So then everything that falls under that umbrella is in the first episode, right? And then the second episode was where they introduced that, like, the dog mentality, which is exactly what everyone thinks about wrestling. Like, everyone implicitly assumes wrestlers are like this vicious, like, you know what I mean? You already know what I'm talking about. But Parker Proyle, another BV grad, he gave it a name, you know, and he called it the dog mentality. And it really lit a fire under these wrestlers. And they came out, and Joe Lynn goes and throws a boy, tries to wrestle a boy to win the duel, tosses him and pins him, you know. That's awesome. But, like, you know, whether it's like confidence, whether it's like find a way to win the match, you know, people say that all the time, but that's such a life lesson, you know. And I try to tell those stories in terms of the episodes. Each episode's a different lesson, a different story. And I don't know. I can't take all the credit for it, obviously, because I didn't make them say those amazing things in those interviews. Like, they're the ones who told the story. I just interpreted it, I suppose, is the way I could say it in one sentence. I hope you're editing out all of the crap I said.
Right?
Stuff.
Hey, man, you're giving me some good stuff. I mean, you have taken this thing that you're like, okay, I want to try this out. I want to do this, and now you've really made this into a career. But before we talk about you with the Storm Chasers, I do want to ask you about a moment within Unsanctioned. It's right towards the end. It's the state tournament. The state tournament you went to was the one right before the sport was officially sanctioned. So what was it like in that moment? Because I think you had one of the coolest shots ever is the fact that they had all the girls lined up on the mats. I think it was finals day, and then they lift up the boards that said sanctioned. What was it like in that moment to one? I mean, your whole thing, this whole project was called Unsanctioned, and you end it with the sport being sanctioned. So how did it feel to be in that moment with all those people at the state tournament and just seeing this sport being legitimized in the state of Iowa?
Yeah, so it was pretty awesome. It was awesome. I feel like you said, it was a really cool shot. And I have a major regret from that moment, which was getting that shot instead of getting Troy Greeter's reaction to that. I got his reaction in an interview later, but that was days after, you know. But it was also interesting because I already knew it was going to happen before that. You know, I forgot. I asked the guy. There was rumors, lots of rumors going around. Are they sanctioned? You know, whatever. And this was so funny. I was in Andrea France's office saying, like, you know, the perfect scenario for this project is like in October before the season started. I go, the perfect scenario, I think, is like if at the state tournament they announced that it's going to get sanctioned, but like everyone was saying it's going to be like 2 to 5 years down the road. I was like, it's not going to happen, but like, what if? That would be amazing, right? She's like, yeah, it would be amazing. Okay, get out of my office. Stop eating all my chocolate bars, you know? And no, she lets me eat as many chocolate bars as I want. Anyway, she's too nice. But yeah, like I already knew it was gonna happen. There were so many like whispers and rumors, and I walked right up to one of the most important people in Iowa high school athletics at the time. I don't remember his name. I walked right up to him with my big camera, the 850 is like that big. And I go, I'm obviously media. And I go, sir, I'm not claiming to know anything. However, if there was going to be a big announcement in like 30 minutes, where should I be to cover it the most effectively? And he said, well, they're going to announce that they're sanctioning girls wrestling. Is that what you're talking about? I was like, I don't know. You know? And so he's like, I would be up there. This is exactly what's going to happen. They're going to do the parade of champions. Girls are going to lift up signs going to say sanctioned. I was like, making it really easy for me. Like, thank you very much. So, I mean, it was a blessing and a curse because I was able to be prepared for that moment, but I fixated on that moment, and I should have had one of the managers who were wonderful. The Ridgeview girls wrestling managers were so awesome because they would let me like charge my phone with their phone chargers or whatever, whenever I didn't have my camera and I had to use my phone to record. But I should have had them record that, and I recorded someone's reaction because they worked for 70 years to get that done. You know, like that was a huge project for them, and they finally did it. And I don't know. I can't regret it too much because I did get a good shot. But I'm always like I always wish, like, what if I had? I don't know.
Well, I tell you what,
behind the scenes for that moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, it really kind of plays into a couple of factors that I've really learned within being in sports and being in media is number one, you can't be afraid to come up and talk to people. And you and I think really know that. That's how you build connections. That's how you build a network. But number two, the quote that really sticks with me, and it kind of goes into your whole thing of being prepared, is, you know, and people can go and look up the photographer I'm talking about, but the quote he said was, you could afford to be an hour or 2 hours early, but you can't afford to be a 60th of a second late. And I think that's so crucial to what you and I both do with video, is that you got to be over prepared for a lot of these moments.
Correct. Yeah. And with my job, like at the Storm Chasers, I've realized, you know, I've mapped out the whole ballpark and like vantage points for like which shots. Like if there's a runner on first base, the best possible shot I can get is a double play. So I'm like, okay, well, where's the best vantage point to get a double play? Well, it's right behind first base. So like if we walk a batter, I like stand up and basically run over to like right behind first base, you know, and because like you said, like if it happens a 60th of a second before I get set, it's basically like it never happened.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, let's talk about the opportunity you've got right now. You're with the Omaha Storm Chasers. That's AA affiliates, if I'm not mistaken. No, AAA affiliate of the KC Royals, of course. Talk to me about how you were able to get that opportunity, because, I mean, you're only 2 years out of college, and you've been able to make this really awesome multi-episode series, Unsanctioned. I'd assume that Unsanctioned really helped you get this job with the Storm Chasers. Am I correct?
I'd like to think so. I can't 100% say, because I also had a pretty dang good internship in Bismarck, North Dakota for a baseball team up there. I'd have to talk to the HR lady that hired me. But I don't know. I think that it definitely came up in the interview when they said, like, hey, what is this? Like, is this, I think I had to really sell it to them that this wasn't just like some student project. It was really something I poured myself into and worked on for a whole year. Really became a workaholic for like a year, you know? But like, yeah, it definitely came up in the interview, but I think going to Bismarck, which is just something, I don't even remember applying for this internship. It was my junior year of college, and you know, COVID was still kind of around. At least on college campuses, it was still around. I don't know if everyone else was dealing with it. I didn't really leave campus very often, but yeah, I remember like getting an email from somebody saying like, "Hey, we got your application. We would like to interview you if this is cool." And I go, "Okay, sure." It was just for a media intern position in Bismarck, North Dakota, for a baseball team there, a Northwoods League team. And I'm like, I don't even remember applying for that. It turns out I applied for it at like 3:30 in the morning one day, and I was like, I probably sleep applied to it. Like I don't remember that at all. But anyway, I did a phone interview, and then I did a Zoom interview, and they offered me the internship. I get there. they had like 30. It's a front office of like 19 people, but there's like 30 interns, which was so awesome because I was the director of the broadcast for 36 games, which that was huge. That gave me so much confidence. That was one of, sorry, I'm hiccuping.
Oh, geez.
Someone's got to scare me or something. But that gave me so much confidence going into my senior year to be like, well, I can do this unsanctioned thing, But it was that was huge. And then I actually went back to Bismarck. Wow. So this is actually kind of wild. I did not take a single in. I took 2 online classes my senior year, the second semester of my senior year. And then I left campus to go to Bismarck to do an internship. And then those internship credits filled out the rest of my elective credits, and then I could graduate. But I was on campus not taking a single in-person class. And I got special permission to do that so that way I could still record for my capstone. But I still lived in the dorms and with all my friends and whatever. And that was kind of wild because basically I left during the the state tournament ended like January. I left in like early March. And so I was like just recording like postseason interviews for like a month. I was like just trying to get as many as I could because I was like, what if I sit down to edit this and like I needed someone's perspective on something and I just didn't get it, So I was interviewing as many people as I could. And there was interviews, I have to apologize to so many people where I recruited an interview with like Jason Shepard's son, Ian, who's Tatum's older brother. And I just never used it because the lighting was terrible. I set it up so bad and the lighting was awful. And I just never used it. And I feel so bad. But anyway, that's beside the point. I went to Bismarck and I was working 9 to 5 for this baseball team. And then I would work 9 to 5 and then like from like 7 to like 4 in the morning, I would edit Unsanctioned. So most of the editing for Unsanctioned was in North Dakota because I moved my computer to the office so I could work so I could use my computer for my internship. And it's a desktop computer. So I would just hang out in the office like 3 in the morning. And so, yeah, that's what most of it was. But, yeah, I mean, I would say the combination between Unsanctioned and that internship is what got me into the Storm Chasers. That was way too long of an answer.
I'm just letting you do your thing, man. I'm just letting you talk. I'm loving it. Talking about what you do at the Storm Chasers, what is kind of a normal day look like for you?
Oh, there's no such thing as that.
Okay, you got it, boy. It's sports. I get that.
but I would say, I don't know, in the off season, it's I get to work at 9, I leave at 5, and then I don't know. Basically, the main thing is preparing for the next season. So right about this time of year, opening day is about 37 days away, 36 days away. I've got to get every single video board thing, like whatever, like our trivia question for in between innings, like those all have to be done before the season, obviously. Like I can't do them the day of. Not anymore. Now I'm not in college anymore, and so I gotta get those done these days. But really, like from like the end of September to like Christmas time, I'm basically just making videos to remind people on social media that we still exist, even though baseball is not happening. Right. Which is it'll be like some random holiday. Like I remember it was like International Catchers Day. So we're like, let's make a hype video of all of our catchers. And it was like, okay, sure, whatever. It's pretty simple. But in season is where my job gets really fun because the minor league schedule is 6 home games in a row and 6 away games in a row. Now, a home game day consists of I get in the office about 9:30, 10, and then I leave about 10:30, 11 p.m. So it's about a 12 to 13 hour work day, and then the next day I got another one. So for 6 days in a row. And the first half of the day, I'm just working on whatever, organizing footage from the day before. But then once like the game day starts up, I'll get my SD cards ready, make sure my batteries are charged, just get ready to to whatever. I'll set up some broadcast cameras for we have game day workers come in and they will run cameras or TD or whatever. And then the game starts, I just shoot footage. And then when I shoot footage, I'll shoot footage. If I get a good clip, I'll run inside, edit it in like 9:16, and then send it to our social media manager and she'll put it out. Right. And so that's always hectic. I would love to get like a video editor that I can just be like, make this so I can stay out there. But sometimes it's nice to get in the AC, you know. But yeah, I mean, and then in the off, we have these sponsored videos in the off season or the off weeks where it's just there's no games. It's just a 9 to 5 day. I got to make like homestand highlights. We have a Chasers chat where it's basically just an interview with a player, and we ask them some serious questions and some wacky questions, and give the fans what they want, and then whatever is coming up, like for Marvel night, I'll make a Marvel style hype video where like the last year it was Across the Spider-Verse transitions with like one of the songs from the movies, within the baseball highlights, of course. But yeah, I don't know. It's always different. It's a lot of fun, as you know.
Well, and I think that's kind of the exciting thing because, you can approach one game day one way, but another one another way. So in all reality, you don't really get to have the same day twice. Right.
Yeah. Like we had a doggy day and I was like, well, I guess today I'm just getting footage of dogs. That's it. Just dogs. Someone could throw a no-hitter and I probably wouldn't know about it.
Because you're so busy getting dogs.
Today I'm shooting footage of dogs. Yeah.
So talk about just this whole opportunity, because I think, you've really had a chance to grow who you are and grow your style of video editing. But I know the one thing that when it comes to like creative positions like this, it's the fact that it's maybe the burnout, but it's really kind of like, oh, you see other creatives like on Twitter or TikTok and you're like, man, I'm not at that level. Do you have any of those kind of thoughts that swirl through? And if you do, kind of how do you combat that?
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, so the first thing is I have the best opportunity possible because I'm from Crete, Nebraska, which is an hour away from Omaha. Normally, if you want to pursue a career in sports, you got to move far, far away because there's not that many opportunities. And I think like 100 people applied for my job. So like, I'm just very lucky to be here. The other reason I'm lucky to be here is I get 75 days where I get to shoot sports. If I worked for a soccer team or a football team, it would be like 11, so I get to grow. I get to really hone my skills here and just get as good as I possibly can. And I've always kind of identified as a video editor and not so much a video shooter. And now I can really say that I'm a video shooter. When I hit the point where I could follow the baseball from the pitcher all the way to the catcher when it's going 90 miles an hour, I was like, oh my God, I'm doing it. It's very difficult to do. And once I got to the point where I could just do it whenever I wanted to, and that's when I knew I was like, okay, I'm really getting better here. And I don't think I'd be there if I worked for a soccer or a football team or even a hockey team.
Well, and I think the coolest thing that, and I love that you picked this up, is because you've noticed in your own editing stuff, in your own videography skills, you've noticed that you're getting better. And I think that's really the exciting thing about being in creative positions, is that you over time see yourself getting better, and that motivates you to keep kind of moving forward and moving forward.
Yeah, and there's two ways of knowing you're getting better. And one is definitely preferable. The one that's preferable is when you do something that you've seen other people that you admire do, and you go, oh, I just did it. Wow, that's great. The non-preferable, but I still like, it's still a decent feeling, is when you look at something you made a year ago and go, oh, that's crap. That sucks.
Yep.
I remember being proud of that. But that means you grew. That means you got better,
Yeah, if you're going back and looking at your stuff from like a year ago, 2 years ago, and you're like, oh yeah, that's really good, maybe it's time to try something new.
And you know what? That was actually really I was talking to Joshua Tigas, if you've met him. Mm-hmm. He's another Carroll kid like yourself. But I was telling him, I was like, I went back and rewatched Unsanctioned after a year, and was like trying to prepare myself. I'm like, it's not gonna be as good as you remember it, because when I made it, it was the best thing I'd ever made. It's not gonna be that good anymore. I rewatched it and I was like, dang it. Like, it's still the best thing I've made so far, probably. So, but I grew in other aspects.
Yeah.
I think I haven't done so much feature stuff since then, so maybe that's why. But,
Right.
yeah.
But the biggest thing that I really want to hit on, because I think you've done a really awesome job of just carving your own path and, realizing that you have this passion for video editing and for creating moments and for capturing those moments. So what are some tips that you would give individuals who want to get into this, but just don't know where to exactly start?
Well, I would say the first thing is you gotta know why you want to do it. The reason why I like doing it is because I always liked entertaining people. If I'm making a video, it's for some. I was very aware of the target audience, and whether that target audience is as specific as like my mom. If I'm a sixth grader making a stop motion video or something, I just want my mom to like it. That's all I cared about at the time. Or if it's for my football team in high school, like, well, obviously I want the seniors to like it. I want my coach to like it. So keeping that in mind, and why do I want to make this? Is it because I just want to make it, or is it because I really want the person I'm making it for to enjoy it? That was a big thing for me. And then the other thing is you got to have someone in your life that you trust, that you can show it to, and they can tell you honestly whether it's good or crap, or what's good about it and what's crap about it. And my brother is the most blunt person in the world. I give him credit. He is literally in the unsanctioned credits, because my whole life I could show him something and he could be like, I think that's stupid. I think that effect sucks. But you know what? He'll tell me when something's cool, and he will not pull his punches. I think a lot of people, they like that, where it's like, oh, I'm the bad cop. I tell you everything's bad. It needs to get better or whatever. Like, especially when you're like editing a paper or whatever. They tell you it's garbage or whatever. And that's whatever. But if you're going to do that, if something's good, you got to just praise it. And he does a good job, man. He really makes me feel good when I make something that he thinks is good. And so he's been around for literally my entire life. And then when I went to college, I was doing videos for Shaun White for free. The next tip is do things for free. And I'll hit on that after this. But I was doing videos for him, and I just remember him going, well, that's really cool, but like, I think you can do better. I think you can do better. And I go like, oh, like, usually people just tell me it's good and they tell me how awesome I am. This is different, but it's good for me because I really grew. I produced like 10 videos my freshman year for the BVU wrestling team. And that was, I didn't think I would do that. Going into college, I thought maybe I'd get like one or two and that would be good. But he would ask me, he's like, hey, can you do a video about this guy? He's been doing really good. I was like, oh yeah, sure. Or this guy. He's like, can you make a video for each senior to post? And like, some of them never even got posted, but like, I don't regret making it because I got better. You familiarize yourself with new programs and that sort of thing. And he motivated me to like learn how to use After Effects. And I was so proud of some of the graphics I made. And like I said, I look at them now, I'm like, oh my God, thank God I made it, because otherwise, thank God I did this back then, because otherwise I'd be doing this crap now and thinking it's good,
Right. Well, and it's also the fact of, you being on your own path and not having like, I guess, a supervisor above you to say, let's try this thing or that thing. But you're really organically trying out these things. It's like, okay, I've seen what this person has done, so let me try to apply it to my own thing. But again, to your point exactly, I think if you're getting into whether it's broadcasting, or whether it's content creation, or it's videography or video editing, It's number one, as you mentioned, doing stuff for free. I know people hear that and it sucks, but until you build up that portfolio and the proof that you can do this stuff, that's what you got to do. And number two, it's just learning with each project. You know, what are you good at? What's your style? What's your look? What's your feel? And again, I think you have done a phenomenal job of doing that through these video projects. You varied what you were doing. I mean, like you said, you never did a docu-series, but here you are with a multi-episode thing that is so badass, man.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. And like, when you go to college for something like media or something like video production, all the classes you take will have very valuable information. But I mean, maybe it's just my personality. I always found when I'm given a project in a class and they're like, do this, I'm like, I know I need to learn how to do this. I understand that this is going to be good for me, but I'm going to do this at the very last second. And the thing you want me to learn, I'm going to shoehorn in the crappiest possible way, and I'm going to get a C on this project, But like when I was doing this work for Sean White, the BV wrestling coach, everything I did, it was because like I had this idea and I was like, I want to try this out, and that curiosity, if you feed that curiosity, it's going to take you to places, some places that stink, but it'll take you some great places too. And all you got to do is be able to, I guess, understand whether, like I have this really great idea for an effect, and you do it, and then you decide, am I going to use this effect just because I actually created what was in my brain, or am I going to figure out if this is actually a good effect or not? That's something I learned my sophomore year, where I worked my butt off. I had this idea for, I don't want to speak too much video editor mumbo jumbo, but the find edge effect in After Effects. I would do that, and I would basically have where every beat of the music there was an outline of the person, and it would boom, like flash, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be so cool, and I did it. I worked my butt off to like really create my vision with that. I was up in that Mac lab until 2 a.m. for like 3 days in a row. Okay. And I rewatched that and I'm like, that was the stupidest idea ever. Why did I, but through the process of making that, I was like, oh my God, I learned I got so much faster at editing in After Effects. I learned so many other tools in After Effects through creating that. I just wish I never posted it, because someday a future employer is going to see that, not look at the date and be like, that guy sucks, we're not hiring him.
But I think there is also value within posting your stuff, because I think the biggest asset that a video editor or anyone who works within the visual content creation stuff, posting your stuff and having that portfolio ready to show to employers is so important. And obviously you posted every single episode of Unsanctioned, and that's available to watch for free on Rockfin. So, you can say, hey, I made this really cool thing here, or this really cool thing with this thing. So that portfolio, I think that I think you and I have realized is so important in what we do.
Right. And back to the thing about doing stuff for free. Like, I mean, you said it sucks. I never had any complaints. I loved it, man. I was just so happy to be able to create that stuff. And the payment I got was the wrestlers would come up and say, hey, man, that video was really cool. Thanks. That was my payment. And I loved it. And I feel like if I had gotten paid as a freshman, it would have cheapened that. I don't think I would have been excited to produce. I would have felt like I was doing it as a job, And I think that if you can't do something for free, like I can edit videos for free for the rest of my life. If I worked for the Storm Chasers better not see this, but Storm Chasers for no money, and I had to like work at Walmart to support myself and work for the Storm Chasers on the side, I would do that, because I love my job and I love producing videos. It's the best. Like I said, I'm not resigning anytime soon, and I hope that my employers don't see this. But it's I love shooting, editing videos, telling stories, and most importantly, entertaining an audience that sees my content. That's the thing that means the most to me. And like in the case of Unsanctioned, telling stories that I really think impacted people. The best award, I think I was up for Unsanctioned Chapter 1 was up for a student Emmy. It's Great Lakes Emmy, something like that. I don't know. Mason McGrew is the only person I've met that won it. So it would have been a huge deal to me because he's a guy I look up to. I unbelievably look up to him. He's awesome. So if I would have won that too, I would have felt so awesome. I didn't win it. Loris won it with something that I'm sure no one's ever heard of, but whatever. But the best award I could get is like Jason Shepard commented, like tagged me in a comment chain of a mom of a girl who decided to do wrestling because they watched Unsanctioned. And they watched Unsanctioned. They thought they didn't think they would ever wrestle, and then they watched it. They saw Tatum Shepard, they saw the coaches in that program, and they thought you know what, I can do that, and they wrestled, and they love it. And that was, dude. Even if that was I'm sure there were more people who that affected in that way, but even if that was the only person, all that work would have been well worth it.
That was kind of one question I was going to ask you too, is that, Unsanctioned has, I think, become something bigger than you can ever imagine, and that the proof is right there with it. So, how does it feel knowing that this project, this crazy idea that you had, not only were you able to do it and succeed, but now there's kind of an after effect to it now that you're this is motivating girls to go out for for wrestling, and it's only helping the sport grow in the state of Iowa. How does that feel for you?
It feels good. The way I see it is Troy Grader and Jason Shepard have been doing this for years. They've been finding girls, motivating them, getting them to go out for wrestling, and unlocking the greatest version of themselves through the sport, which I think there's nothing better than wrestling. If you want to unlock the best version of yourself, wrestling's the best thing that you can do. That's a biased opinion, but that is my opinion. And, with Troy and Jason doing that for so many years, I figured when I do this, I'm simply broadcasting. I'm just going to broadcast their message to everyone else. So I don't necessarily see it as I'm doing this. I see it as I just created a microphone for Troy and Jason Shepard to do this. And not only them, the girls are also, without them and without them being amazing representatives of the sport of wrestling, I don't think the message is the same, But all I see of myself is a microphone to them. I just wanted everyone to see how awesome they are. And I felt like if I did that, it would get the job done. And by the way, my younger sister joined wrestling like a year after Unsanctioned came out, or maybe the same year it was coming out. And I attribute a lot of that to her being the biggest Tatum Shepard fan in the whole world.
Yeah, that's cool. That's so cool. It's just, there's something, you and I think are on the same page when it comes to this. We're not in this sphere, this slice of life for the fame, for the fortune, for all this stuff, but it's simply, it's the reactions. The reactions are the best part, because it feels great when you get that response, because all this work is kind of led up to this, and to see the responses from that, it's just kind of some of the best parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even think of how to articulate that. It means so much. Like when my capstone premiered and all the Ridgeview girls were there watching, and there's such a positive response. Now I don't think I've ever told them this, but when I was talking to them that day, they were like, well, we haven't seen you in so long, because shooting had ended. I was in North Dakota. I came back to graduate, to walk under the arches and present my capstone. And they were like, we haven't seen you in so long. Like, how are you? And I was like, I mean, you haven't seen me in so long. I saw you guys every single day, for like 8 hours a day while I was editing. I was editing footage and interviews of you guys. And so I feel like I know you better than any just random college student, and yeah, I don't know. The connection to those subjects is one of the big things. They invited me to go to their this year. This is like 2 years later, they invited me to go to their end of the year banquet for their wrestling team. Like, I feel like I'm part of the family. That was a big thing. But like you said, the impact on the other people, Shaun White, who obviously huge influence for me, told me after that premiered. I keep hiccuping. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Man, this is the most proud I've ever been of a wrestler. And I was like, wow, that means I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. That is burned into my memory forever. That, because obviously he understands, like I do, that had I not worked my butt off as a wrestler and whatever, like that sport unlocked so much about me that I poured into this project. And, at most of, I would say a lot of the people in my life that inspired me are wrestling coaches, whether it was my actual wrestling coach, from high school to like Shaun White, to Troy, to Shepard. All those guys are just so awesome. That made me want to spread the message of this sport. And so when that thing aired and everyone watched it, I was like, wow, I feel like I'm doing my job, as a former wrestler, to spread this message, and I'm doing it in the way that I love doing it. I'm doing it the best way I can with this gift that God gave me. I'm using it for good, and that feels very good.
Yeah, man, we have had such a great conversation so far. I'm loving this, man. So I got a few more questions before I let you go, because I've already taken a lot of your evening away from you. But
has it been a long time?
It's been a long time, man. It's been so long. I personally remember, because I was at a point not too long ago where I reached out to you because I knew you were working on Unsanctioned. And I had my own really big video project that I reached out to you because I'm like, you've dealt with interviewing people and this and that and storytelling, and that's such a big aspect of Unsanctioned. And I just gotta thank you personally, because that video project that I made for the Denison Slushwick basketball team, them losing their assistant coach for the girls team, I don't think would have gotten to the point where it was if I didn't reach out to you and you giving me the pointers that you did. So thank you for just being you and being so gracious about giving away some of your deep secrets of videography, man.
Well, look, you did a heck of a job with that, by the way.
Thank you.
That kind of flew under the radar. I forgot about that. I forgot we had that conversation. But yeah, I remember watching that project and being like, man, Tyler is killing it on this. But if you insist, I will take all the credit. I'm kidding.
I'll bow down to you as we speak.
Please, for the love of God, don't do that. But yeah, man, I can't even tell you how much, because you're like, okay, I'm just gonna throw it right back at you. One of the big things, like my freshman year when you were a senior, you got up like, it seemed like every single day to do a radio show at 7 a.m. And I remember being like, dude, I'm never going to work that hard ever, but you got a great job, and look at you now. And I was like, okay, so maybe I should do that. And you showed me, you along with people like Mason McGrew and like Guy Tannenbaum, like all of you guys who are older than me showed me that, like, working your butt off on something you're passionate about, it's not work. You like it. It's not like, you guys weren't partying every weekend. I mean, maybe you party sometimes. I wouldn't know. I wasn't cool enough to be invited to the party, so I wouldn't know. But you guys were like, your party was in Logie, and you guys were just grinding and making awesome stuff. And you guys showed me that, like, you don't have to play video games to be fulfilled. Like, and not that I'm a video game guy, but like, if you just pour all your time into stuff, like projects and stuff you're passionate about, it's a much more fulfilling college experience than doing basic college student crap,
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, man. College has seemed so long ago at this point. I think for the both of us, we're just out doing what we're passionate about. And along with our passions, I wanted to ask you this: with Unsanctioned, there's so many, like you said, there's so many characters, there's so many emotions, there's so many stories that have come from Unsanctioned. If you had to boil it down to just one moment from it, whether it's a moment that you filmed, an interview, what's that one moment that really stands out from you from that project?
Yeah, there's a few.
Okay.
One of the big ones, Danny Crone, who I didn't have a ton of footage of, but she she was her second year of wrestling. She had a pretty underwhelming beginning of the year, but just popped off at the state tournament and made it to the second day. You know, she was a senior, where she was losing at the end of the match. This is the end of the fifth chapter, where she's losing to a girl who's on paper, a way better wrestler than her. She's kicking her butt. She's getting her butt kicked. She's not giving up. She's getting turned to her back, but she won't get pinned, you know. And something flips, and she just decides, like, I'm going to fight. If this is my last match, I'm going to go for it, you know. And she gets back. She's instead of being down by like 6 or 7, now she's only down by 1 or 2, you know. And her coaches say, like, let her up. It's a strategy. A lot of wrestlers, if they're on top and they're down by a few, they let their opponent up so they can attack them again because they don't think that they can flip them over to pin them. And they're saying, dude, let her up. She says, no. And they're like, okay, all right, go for it. And basically things take a turn for, like, she's right about to come back, and it takes a turn for the worse. She gets called for locked hands. The girl gets a reversal. She's down by 4 now with like 10 seconds left. And she like falls into it. She reaches back, grabs her head, and falls in and pins the girl with like 1 second left. And that was one of the best moments I think I could have. You know, those are the moments you really. Those are the ones that you're like, wow, I couldn't have. If I was writing a novel, it wouldn't have been better than that. You know, that is exactly how, like, you know, every great sports movie has that moment, and it just happened in real life in front of my eyes, you know. But one of the things that stood out to me about that is, like, Jason Shepard said something along the lines of, that's what you want for your athletes, for them to work hard, pour themselves into the sport, you know, but work hard and for that to pay off. And then he said something like, I hesitate to say that because a lot of people would think that if you work hard at something and you don't achieve what you want, then it was just a waste of time. And he says that's not true. You know, hard work, it will pay off at some point, you know, and that's, like, I think that's sort of the message I wanted to convey. It's like, my dad would say this whole time, hard work pays off guaranteed. You know, you work hard. If you don't achieve what you set out to achieve, that's okay because it's going to pay off sometime. You know, down the road, it's going to pay off sometime. And that's such a wrestling message. But, like, we even touched on that today inadvertently, talking about, like, well, you worked your butt off to make some kind of cool effect, and it turns out to be crap, but you still learned all the skills to do that. That's gonna help you someday, you know. And so yeah, that's one of my favorite moments. And then just Izzy Deeds proving just she's the toughest girl on the planet by having a hyperextended elbow and winning the state tournament. You can't write that. That's like a perfect scenario for a documentarian. I'm like, well, I see her get hurt, and I'm like, well, that sucks. But, like, what if she, like, wins state? Unlikely, but she just did it. You know, she's tough. You know, and wrestling is such a brutal sport, and she came out on top that year, which is awesome.
Yeah, you know, and if people need to go back, and I know that at this point you have grown in your skills and as a guy who's making content on the daily basis for a team. But man, honestly, people need to go watch Unsanctioned. It's honestly one of the coolest projects I've seen, along with Mason McGrew's thing, which hopefully I'm going to have him on this podcast. I'm determined to have him on here, man.
Oh my God, you can't even compare Unsanctioned to Mason McGrew's Toy Story 3. That guy worked on that for 7 years, reshot a whole bunch of it. Man, dude, that is a guy that I'm like, wow. You know,
yeah.
I remember him telling me, like, I'm a big Star Wars fan, and so when the Clone Wars season 7 was coming out, I was like, "Here, you're gonna watch it?" And he goes, "I don't have time to watch it." I was like, "Well, what about over fall break?" He's like, I think I'm going to be even busier over fall break. I go, oh my God, that sounds horrific. But he taught them, that obviously taught me, like we talked about earlier, that work, when you're passionate about the work, it's very rewarding. But man, that Toy Story, you got to check out Toy Story 3 IRL. It is one of the greatest things I have ever seen. It might be my favorite YouTube video, which is really saying something.
Man, it's so cool.
But it's more than a YouTube video. Like, you should be able to buy that on DVD in Walmart. It's so impressive.
I don't know if Disney would allow it, but yeah, I agree with you.
I know it's a crime against humanity. But it is just so impressive. It is so impressive.
And I'm really hoping I get Mason on this podcast, because it's such a cool project that he worked on.
I would definitely be your first listener.
Perfect. Well, Clayton, you'll be my first listener for this, but you're my fourth guest on this show. And I thank you for taking some time, man. This has been such a great conversation, and it's been so great to give people who are up and coming and want to get into this business, I think, some really awesome tips.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I really appreciate you having me. It's always a good time talking to you. And the only difference is we have a recording device on site. That's it. But I love these conversations.
Man, I do too. And I want to end this interview with one of the questions I ask all the time. This whole podcast is going about beyond in life, beyond in your career, going above and beyond, essentially. So what are some ways, what's one reason that you go beyond in life?
I don't know. I think I really love what I do. One of my football coaches his name's Dave Purdom. He taught choir and he taught football, which is like kind of crazy because those two things usually don't go together. But, one thing he taught me is everything you do in life, you should have some kind of passion for. And if you're not passionate about a thing, it should at least benefit something you're passionate about. And so, like, right now I'm doing video for a baseball team. I'm engaged, and I coach wrestling. And those are one of those things involves my favorite person in the whole world. One of them involves my favorite sport in the whole world, and one of them involves my favorite activity in the whole world. And so I just would say, like, everything I do, I'm passionate about. If I worked at Walmart, or if I worked at really, if I had any other job, I can't say I'd want to go above and beyond, But I think that what really helps drive me is I have always wanted to be the best I could be at what I do, and I only do things that I love,
Yeah, man, Clayton Van Horn, you have been so great. I wish you well in whatever you do next, whether you're with the Storm Chasers for a long time, wherever you go in life, man. Congratulations for your success, and I'm just so happy for you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, but I thank you. You're awesome, man.
I try to be, man. I try to be for everyone around me. I try to be as positive as I can for everyone around me, man. But Clayton, man, it's been so great. Hey, thanks so much for stopping by and having this great conversation.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And that was Mr. Clayton Van Horn. Man, huge shout out to Clayton for taking some time out of his very busy schedule to sit down and conversate with me on this episode. Man, so good to catch up with him too. He's such a genuine guy. I mean, he's so fun to be around. I only knew him briefly when I was graduating from college. He was coming in, but to see the growth that he's had is so cool to see. He's taken this passion he had from an early age and has now applied it as a full-time career. I mean, you can't ask for anything cooler than that. So if you ever want to talk with Clayton, ask him about the experience with Unsanctioned. Of course, I'll have some of his links right down below. Make sure you show him some love, man. He is just such a fiery spirit, and I love the work that he's doing at the Omaha Storm Chasers. So give him some love there. Go give the Omaha Storm Chasers some love, man. That's just some really cool minor league baseball happening over in Omaha. But that's going to do it for this episode of Beyond the Broadcast. Next Friday, man, we got such a great episode. Another person that I've had the chance to meet throughout my own personal journey. It's Mr. Joe Picararo. We're talking a lot of wrestling with that episode. We've got some Elimination Chamber news we'll talk about, of course, the fallout from that. We'll talk about WrestleMania. We'll talk about other wrestling stuff. We'll talk about college athletics. I'm so excited for that conversation with Joe, and you'll be able to catch that again next Friday. So make sure you follow the show right here on your preferred podcast platform, or if you're on YouTube watching this, make sure you subscribe. It just helps me out to grow this show and to really make this possible to be in front of all of you. So again, make sure you follow, make sure you subscribe, and of course, make sure you follow us on all of our social media platforms that are all listed below in this episode. All right, until next week, I hope that you all have a fantastic time. Make sure you do great things, do good, and always make sure that you go beyond in life. My name's Tyler Bruner, and hey, we will see ya next Friday on Beyond the Broadcast.